talking to a friend, Kaila Colbin, who I met in New Zealand. Kaila does loads of stuff. She's a social media guru. Looking at your LinkedIn profile, there's so many projects that you're working on that are current. So you're co-founder and trustee of Ministry of Awesome, and you are a curator as well for TEDx. You're a co-founder for Falcon Training. You're a contributor for Media Post. You're a director for Missing Link. So really what I wanted to ask you actually is to introduce yourself and just talk a bit about what you do at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds quite overwhelming when you put it all that way. So what I do is essentially I'm a serial entrepreneur, and which may be obvious from the kind of long list of things that I'm involved in. And I guess my kind of key focus and the areas that I found myself to be most effective in are, number one, starting projects and getting them, if not fully complete, to a point where they can be effectively handed off to someone else. And the other thing that I really focus on is how I can play kind of the most supportive role in my community that I can play. And so there's kind of a whole list of projects, as you mentioned, that I have my fingers in. But really right now my two primary babies are Ministry of Awesome and TEDx. And TEDx, for those of you who are not familiar, TED is a conference that started in 1984 and originally stood for Technology Entertainment Design. Over the years, it's evolved to just ideas worth spreading, and what they do is every year they bring the most randomly amazing people from all over the world doing whatever randomly amazing thing they're doing, and they give them up to 18 minutes to deliver the talk of their lives. So you'll get, famous people like Al Gore and Gordon Brown, and you'll get people like Jill Bolte Taylor, who's a brain scientist who had a stroke. And she talks about what it was like to have a stroke from the perspective of a brain scientist. So just, hugely random things. And all these talks are available online for free at TED.com, and it's one of the most visited websites in the world. They get millions and millions of unique visitors every month. And 4 years ago, they started a program called TEDx, where people could apply for a license from TED to operate a local, independently organized TED-style event. And so I've been doing that in Christchurch since 2010. We've run 5 events. We've got our 6th one coming up this October. And what it's done is it has given us a kind of brand and platform to be able to bring people together around big ideas, and some of them potentially ideas that can directly impact the future of our city. Obviously, our city has been reasonably devastated by earthquakes, so conversations about how the city evolves from here are really quite significant in what the future is going to look like in that part of the world. My other primary baby is along those lines as well. It's Ministry of Awesome. And Ministry of Awesome is a nonprofit that we formed about a year ago that exists to water the seeds of awesome in Christchurch. So for us, that's a 3-ingredient recipe. It involves bringing people together, giving them lots of examples of people just like them doing awesome things, and then giving them structured support so they can turn their own awesome ideas into reality. And it's really based on this idea that everybody has awesome in them, and the more we can create the conditions where people feel energized, excited, encouraged, and supported to activate whatever awesome thing they've got to share with the world, the better world we'll live in. So that's what I do.
And how did the Ministry of Awesome kind of come about? How did that group of people meet?
So Ministry of Awesome came about in quite an iterative fashion, and one of the things that I've really spent quite a lot of time on in various startups that I've been involved in is that process of analysis and adaptation. There's really this kind of clay pottery aspect to creating organizations or projects or businesses where initially you kind of have to get a whole bunch of clay and throw it all on the table, and then you start forming it, and as you start forming it you're like, well, it doesn't quite work like that, or I thought it was going to be a jug but really it's more of a salad bowl, or you kind of are awake to the possibilities that are emerging as you continue to work. And with Ministry of Awesome, that's pretty much what happened. So when we first started, there was a group of us kind of rabble-rousers a little over a year ago who were talking about all sorts of random plans and schemes and projects and things we could do in Christchurch that we thought would be cool. And we ended up with kind of a laundry list of projects that we thought, well, these things will be really fun, and they're not about business model, and they're not about scale, and they're not about, ROI, but we just want to see them happen, right? So one of them, for example, is we're talking to the rock group OK Go about them coming to make a video in Christchurch. So Ministry of Awesome was kind of created originally as sort of a bucket to put these things in. And then what we realized very quickly was that as a bucket, it kind of wasn't going to be very effective because it didn't have a clear purpose. When we said to people, oh, we're Ministry of Awesome, and they'd say, well, what do you guys do? And we'd say, well, we just do awesome things. So, for example, we're trying to bring OK Go to Christchurch. And they go, okay, so you're a music promoter? No, we're not a music promoter. That's just one thing, but, we could do other things. Okay, so you're an events organizer? No, we're not so we kind of were coming up against this that we realized very quickly we didn't have a lot of clarity about our purpose or our activities. And one of the other things we realized very quickly was that the laundry list was actually not the important thing, that even if none of those ideas came to fruition, there was still a purpose for this organization that kind of needed to be fulfilled. And so in a very short period of time, we ended up stripping away the laundry list altogether and realizing that the purpose of the organization is actually to create the conditions so that things like the things on that laundry list were more likely to happen, and then a million other things that other people had thought of that we could never imagine. So that's kind of how we got to where we are.
I've seen the bike racks that you've got. They're awesome.
Thank you.
It's so cool, and I love that stuff's actually like implemented. It's not that you're just talking about stuff; like stuff actually happens.
Yeah, well, so one of the funny things that happened when we formed Ministry of Awesome was that, we signed the papers for it in April 2012, and we launched our website in June, and before we launched our website, we had a holding page up on the internet that just said, Ministry of Awesome, coming soon to Christchurch, enter your email to keep up with the awesome. And we did no promotion of it. Like, I put it on my Facebook, and my colleague Sam put it on his Facebook. And based on like nothing, we got 150 people signed up to our emails.
Wow.
So we figured, they're just going to be, it's just all of our friends. So, there's kind of whatever. So we had our website, which is what I would call a minimum viable product website. So it was basically a website that we were not like, this is perfect, it's wonderful, but we were like, we want to get something up. And it had two sides to it, Awesome Inspiration, which is a blog of cool things that we see around the place, and then Your Awesome Ideas, which is a user-generated content platform where people could submit ideas they have for awesome projects that they want to see happen. And we launched our website in June, and we figured, well, because it's just our kind of minimum viable product, we're just going to do a soft launch and email these 150 friends that have signed up. So we did our soft launch, and we ended up on TV and on the front page of the paper and on the radio and on the homepage of the major Russian news site, and in the UK and in the States. Like, it really went ballistic. In Russia, we had multiple pieces of coverage. One of them said, we ran them through Google Translate. One of them said, in New Zealand, revealed the Ministry for Coolness. And the other one said in the body of the text, it said, the greatest thing about this website is that the city council has agreed to fund all of the ideas that people put up. And so I went to the city council and gave them a presentation and said, look, we're really disappointed that you chose to break this news via the Russian media, but we'll get over it and we'll still take your money. So that's all good. So yeah, and so as soon as that happened, we realized we'd gotten so much coverage that we thought we really need to do something very practical and very tangible very quickly. Otherwise, we'll just be more of a talk fest.
I'm going to change the subject slightly, just taking a step back. I'm really interested to know how you actually got to where you are now. So I know you studied, I know you went to university, but can you talk a little bit about that and the decisions you kind of made about what you were going to study and then what you decided to do after that?
Right. I'm happy to. I don't think it is a model that anyone will be able to follow easily. So my degree is in hotel and restaurant administration, and when I graduated, I applied to like a million places to work and got a million rejection letters. And in our flat, in our university flat, we had the wall of rejection, and we just had all of our letters up there. And then underneath it said, but we might not even graduate, and we had all of our kind of failing grades under there. So when I graduated, my kind of main decision process was that I was sick of being in cold weather and I wanted to go somewhere warm. So I started applying to places in Miami. And I took really like the only job I could find, which was that I was working for a company that was a subsidiary of a British merchant bank, and our job was trade and project finance. So we were setting up loans for foreign corporations that wanted to purchase U.S.-made capital goods, which sounds very fancy, but it was a really interesting gig, and I worked for 3 guys who came from very kind of hotshot banking careers, and I graduated university when I was 20, so I was, I guess, 21 when I started working for them, and, you know, super naive, fresh out of school, and, you know, I was kind of a glorified secretary. And I worked for them. The first year that I worked for them, they were funded by this British bank, and then the British bank pulled the funding at the end of the first year, and we got a new backer, which was a Qatari sheikh. And one of our 3 guys decided to go back into kind of proper banking. And because of that, they made me vice president because they needed another person to be able to sign the checks. So 22 years old, I'm a vice president in this kind of small startup trade project finance company in Miami, which is all very random. And then at the end of 3 years, that company kind of ended up dying a death. And but one of the things I learned there was how much effort it actually takes to get things over the line. So I worked on projects, for example, the John Deere distributor in Guatemala wanted to buy 16 John Deere tractors for his distributorship, and there's a loan program through the U.S. government that you can use to be able to borrow money to buy these tractors, because obviously the more we support exports, the more robust the economy. And so the work that I did was arranging for this guy in Guatemala to be able to access this loan scheme from the U.S. government. And just, you know, the amount of I dotting and T crossing and legal back and forth and documentation and making, you know, it just went on forever and ever. And it just, you know, when like I've always been really kind of full of big ideas, but that experience was so powerful in helping me understand that the amount of kind of sweat that it actually takes to get these big ideas to turn them into something real. So I did that for 3 years, and then that kind of shut down. And so then this guy that I met through that company asked me to come and be a business partner with him in his company, which was distributing large format digital printing supplies in Argentina and Brazil, mostly Argentina. My mother grew up in Argentina. I have a lot of family and friends there, and my Spanish is Argentine Spanish, so I feel very comfortable there. And I started that, and again, super naive, super young, made like a billion mistakes with it, and, you know, essentially what the guy wanted, he had a company in Argentina that was a large format digital printer. And so really he wanted someone on the ground who was like his purchasing agent. So I thought I was this like hotshot entrepreneur, you know, like executive, and he definitely did foster that mistaken impression in me. But really I was just, you know, I was just like working, I was their purchasing agent, you know. So so I did that for 3 years, and then his company in Argentina went bust and took, you know, 95% of my sales with it, because that was my kind of primary thing. So so yeah, failure number 2. From there, I went and started another company, failure number 3, which was with a business partner, Ken, and we made a series of videos. We wrote a book, and we had a traveling stage show to teach kids and parents how to use the internet, computers and the internet, and we did really cool things. Like, you know, our book was a really good book, and our videos were actually really cool. We did, you know, proper stage sets and actors and lighting guys and camera people and editors, and I learned how to do video editing and graphic design and all sorts of crazy stuff. And we produced good product, but we had a couple of challenges. One is that we had this incredibly tumultuous working relationship. So now we're really, really good friends, but when we worked together, we were just always at each other's throats. It was really difficult. And two, we didn't have a very clear business model. And we did this tour around the country where we had this 40-foot kind of rock star tour bus that was fully kitted out and decorated, and 6 of us went all over the states, going to schools, teaching kids how to use the internet with this like stage show. And when I say show, like we had a set, we had costumes, we had a whole like the Madonna mics, and we'd run up, jump up on stage. We thought we were rock stars, so we'd jump on stage and be like, "Hey, I'll do it!" And the kids were like, "Ah, whatever." No, they liked us. We did well, but we weren't clear whether we were for profit, non-profit. We had sponsors, but we were offering the service for free, and so are we actively trying to sell our sponsors, and is that unethical? And it was good companies. It was like HP and Symantec and Terra Lakos, but still there was always that kind of lack of clarity. And again, that was an area where I really learned about that the importance of getting to that clarity in your business model, but also we changed business models so many times. When we started that company, our first thing was the videos. And the videos weren't an overnight, $1 million success. And so we said, oh, videos aren't working. We need to do something else. We need to write a book. So we wrote a book. We need to make a package where the book and the video sit together so it's on the shelf with the books where people go when they're looking for computer things and there's a spine and they can see it, whatever. So we made this special package. It's not $1 million success again. We better do this traveling tour. And so we did the tour. And it was like we did really well at each of these things, but we never kind of fully backed them, And it was funny because all along we're doing all this stuff. And meanwhile, the original videos, still selling, like trickling through, still orders coming in from libraries and stuff. So, potentially if we had really stuck with that original model, we could have done quite well with it. Who knows? Obviously, I can't go back in time and explore the alternate path. But yeah, so really, that's all a very kind of long answer. The shorter answer to how I got here is basically by continuing to put one foot in front of the other and continuing to pursue work that I find exciting and meaningful, and continuing to kind of always ask that question of is this the best I've got, and is this the best there is?
So at what point did you decide to just do it? Like, I guess that's I was talking to Carlotta about the same thing, and just thinking, holy crap, I've been in the same situation where I'm like, I really want to go and do my own thing, but I don't know what that is. And how did you actually do it and form your business plan and kind of step out there and just take the plunge, really?
Yeah, so it's not always as romantic as as it might seem. Those first few businesses, I was very much following someone else, right? So there are a couple of things. One is I come from a very entrepreneurial family, and from what I understand, that plays a significant factor in your propensity to instigate things on your own. And that's kind of neither good nor bad, but it's just more that those are the examples I've had my whole life, and so my tendency is to kind of follow those examples. But that being said, like I said, those first ones that I started, I was always following someone else. My large format digital printing thing, I was following the guy in Argentina. Our internet business, I was following my business partner there. And it really, and I really followed that pattern for quite a long time, until I kind of hit a realization that it wasn't working for me. And it was this pattern I repeated over and over and over again, that I would meet someone and I go, wow, this person's awesome. They have the answers. And I'd put them up on a pedestal, and then because I'm kind of good at a variety of things, they'd go, cool, well, we want this woman to come work with us or whatever. And so I'd end up going to work, but we'd have this dynamic where this person's up on a pedestal and I'm sort of in this like supplicant, like, oh, you're so awesome sort of role. And then inevitably, I would get really frustrated and start to become quite resentful of this person that I'd put up on the pedestal, even though it's my own dang fault because I put the person on the pedestal in the first place and put myself in this kind of, subordinate role. So a couple of things I've learned about myself in a very powerful way, and some of these actually pretty reasonably recently. Number one, I'm a terrible employee. Like, I hate to work for other people, and so it just doesn't work for me. There are some people who are excellent employees, and the world would fall apart without both, I think. So one thing I've learned about myself is that I should not put myself in a position where I am an employee, because as much as people think, oh, it'd be so great to have Kaila working for us, all it does is create an environment of tension and resentment. And so I don't want to, that's negative for me and negative for them. So I've learned that. And number two, I've learned that all these people that I thought had answers, none of them have answers. Nobody has answers. Everyone is figuring out as we go. What they might have is a greater ability to make decisions in uncertain environments. So what we think of as answers are really just decisions made with imperfect information that may yet be wrong, right? And so once I realized that, it's like you think, oh, if I talk to Warren Buffett, or if I talk to Bill Gates, or if I talk to, whoever, that this person knows the thing, but nobody knows the future. Nobody has the answer. And so once I realized that, it kind of freed me up to be able to go, actually, I can have conversations with these people now where rather than putting them on a pedestal as knowing more answers than I do, we can have conversations where we're helping each other increase our perspective and understanding so that we can make decisions that are potentially better informed, but which might still be wrong.
So, I mean, kind of on that note, I guess, who would you say are your biggest inspirations?
Oh man, I have so many. I have to say, like, the people that I'm working with right now are really tremendous. So this team that we have with Ministry of Awesome, which is Vicki Buck, who used to be mayor of Christchurch, Sasha McMeeking, who was general manager of strategy and influence at Naitahu, Sam Johnson, who's our local hero. He founded the Student Volunteer Army, now Volunteer Army Foundation, and our staff as well, Kimberly Gilmore and Jules Cohn. And we have a wider group of awesomeness as well, this woman Huya Lambie, and there are all these people around me every day that basically, just in the past week, I've been thinking my new motto is to surround myself with the most awesome people I can find and then bust my ass to live up to their level of awesome. So that's really cool. And because of the work that I do, obviously, working in an organization called Ministry of Awesome, I get to come across a lot of people that are doing really amazing things, who I find really inspirational, and all in a really wide variety of ways. Like some people are ideas people, some people are super in touch with their heart, and I talk to them and they see me so deeply in about 2 seconds, and I feel like just connected. Some people are more numbers people or structure people, which is incredibly valuable, especially if you're super ideas person. You need people who are really focused on the detail to make things happen. So yeah, so I get inspiration like every day all around me. It's pretty cool.
And I've got 2 last questions for you actually. What do you think the best piece of advice is that you were given maybe when you were first starting out, or the most memorable piece of advice, I guess?
Okay. Yet another?
My other one is, what advice would you give to somebody? Well, actually, what advice would you give me, Kaila? or somebody who's basically not necessarily looking to set up their own thing, but just at a bit of a crossroads in their career, and trying to figure out what they want to do. What advice would you give?
Okay, I have a few. So one is, when I was graduating university, the president of our school, in his speech to the assembled, said, there are a million ways to get from birth to death, and every one works.
I like it.
So that was one that totally stuck with me, right? We often have this idea that, like, sneaking suspicion that we're doing it wrong, or we should have done X by now, or we should have a more stable job, or we should have, our startup should have made billions and had an IPO or something like that. And that all that stuff is all just invention. We're all just kind of making it up as we go. That was one. Another really wonderful piece of advice I got was, after my experience with the digital printing company, after my experience with the video internet training company, the tour and the video and the books, I felt really beat down. You know, I felt it had been a really, as I said, my relationship with my business partner was really challenging. I felt like the thing had been a failure. And I felt like that I had failed and I didn't know what I was doing, and, you know, this is all kind of a disaster. And I moved to Colorado and got a job with a paycheck and, you know, curled up in a corner and kind of licked my wounds for a while. And it was there that I met my now husband, and we moved to New Zealand. And when I got to New Zealand, I got a job when I first got there in PR. And I'd been in that job for a year or so, and I attended this lunch where a woman named Melissa Clark Reynolds was speaking. And it was a lunch for women in technology, I think. And it was a pretty small lunch, maybe a dozen people, 15 people. And she went around the room and asked us for our kind of 30-second, you know, startup background. And it got to me, and I said, I'm Kaila. I've started 2 companies, and they both failed. And she immediately said, you need to start another one right now before you forget everything that you learned from those 2 companies. You're exactly the kind of person we need starting companies, not the people who have all their mistakes in front of them. Like, just, you got to get back in. So that was incredibly powerful. She said, and call me for a coffee. So I called her like a month later and said, look, I've quit my job and started a company, and I'm calling you for that coffee. So that was a pretty powerful moment. And then another one I had just last year was I met this guy in New York, Jonathan Rose, who is the Jonathan Rose of the Rose Group of companies. They manage like $1 billion in real estate, and they're like a really, you know, major kind of outfit. And I met this guy, and, you know, here I am, this sort of nobody from the other side of the world, telling him all my kind of grand schemes and plans. And at one point I said, you know, may I stay in touch with you as this progresses? And he kind of thinks for a second, and he goes, I'm going to say occasionally. And here's why. I'm about to turn 60. And as you can imagine, quite a lot of stuff comes across my desk. And I've had to make some very conscious decisions about what is in my path. And this is not in my path. That's not to say it's not exciting. China is very exciting. China is also not in my path. And then he says, but I will say one thing. And he leans forward, he looks me right in the eyes, and he goes, I totally believe that you will be successful at this. And he says, I've been hiring people for a long time, and a lot of people say you should hire for skill. I don't believe that. I think you should hire for emotional intelligence, and I think you have that. And you can imagine, like, I was like, you know, totally just overwhelmed and, like, felt like $1 million. And I just thought, you know, here's this, like, having someone believe in you is one of the biggest things that, you know, and if you don't have someone around who believes in you, A, find those people, and B, start with yourself, because, you know, and then if you don't believe in yourself and don't have anyone around who believes in you, fake it for a bit until you kind of realize it, you know, but just keep showing up every day, pay attention, do your best, and that's really, you know, everyone's doing that as well. And the thing is that, you know, all those people that you see who are like the super hotshots, the, you know, Mark Zuckerberg or whatever, they had to do everything right, and then they also had to get lucky. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so much that just comes down to the moment you find yourself in. And so, yeah. One last piece of advice, I would say talk to strangers.
Talk to strangers.
Talk to strangers. There's a study on lucky people who consider themselves lucky. And one of the kind of dominantly consistent characteristics of people who consider themselves lucky is that they talk to strangers. And when you talk to strangers, what you find is that the person sitting next to you on the bus just happens to be the tea buyer for the entire country of Canada or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, they're just, all those potential connections become illuminated that you'll never find out if you don't talk to strangers. So,
I like it. Kaila, you're awesome, and thank you for talking.
No problem.
I don't know, you're like, well, you are in New York at the moment, right?
Yes, it's 5 to 5.
5 to 5. Okay, yeah. It's a reasonable hour. But yeah, massive thank you. I'm going to post this on my blog, and hopefully other people are going to find it interesting and inspiring. So yeah, thank you massively.
Cool. No worries. Have a great night. Thanks for inviting me.